Hello and welcome to the Block Explorer. I'm Colin Brightfield.
Hey folks, I'm Cash Upton.
The Block Explorer is here to educate and inspire you about the world of crypto and NFTs.
We'll do deep dives into critical concepts for understanding what's happening and discuss the current events shaping the space.
We're making this podcast for the curious, the free thinkers, and the change makers that propel us forward.
As we embark on our adventures, remember that none of this is financial advice and crypto can be risky.
In this episode, we interview Dave Fortson, the founder of LoAcom and LoA Labs, as well as the director of marketing for Regen Network. Regen Network is an amazing, innovative tool that uses blockchain to align incentives for mission-driven communities, especially around climate change and social justice. And there's a whole new movement, actually. We've heard of DeFi, right? Decentralized finance. Well, have you heard of ReFi? That's Regenerative Finance. What can you tell us about Regenerative Finance, Cash?
Oh, what a good interview we had with Dave. It's essentially allowing for these tokens that represent some sort of a climate solution, either a locked away ton of carbon or another verified responsible land stewardship practice, and be able to leverage those into some sort of a liquidity mining, centralized exchanges, putting them into bonds, and leveraging the blockchain to lock away carbon and incentivize better land stewardship.
That's awesome. So, this is really important because a lot of us have heard this negative narrative that crypto is bad for the environment, right? And this episode, I think, is just so fantastic because it just completely flips that narrative on its head. And it just shows that actually crypto and blockchain tools and technology and Web3 actually have some major unlocks and some of the best tools now, best solutions that we have to create some kind of aligned incentives that actually make being good to the environment competitive. One of the things he talked about is how it's been really hard for, nonprofits or governments or, anyone to really compete with the way that capitalism has been done for centuries, is because it doesn't really take the earth into account and the value of clean air and clean water and, different kinds of species and a variety of plants, like all this stuff that we kind of just take for granted, but doesn't make it onto the balance sheet or into the equation when businesses create their plans and roll them out. So what blockchain is letting people do now is to give Earth a seat at the table.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited. And then Dave finishes off with some future trends for the crypto and better world ecosystem that the blockchain is bringing.
Yeah, he had a lot of good insights about, where the crypto space in general is heading, but then also where this specific ecosystem that comprises a bunch of different projects that are all on the bleeding edge of this really new movement of applying crypto and blockchain tools to solve these climate change coordination problems.
Thanks, Dave. Really good to have you on today. For our listeners who aren't familiar with LoAcom, can you please tell us about LoA Labs and why you formed it? Maybe even a brief intro into LoAcom too, to give our listeners kind of a background on how you got into the space.
Sure. So LoAcom, previously known as LoAtree. LoAtree is a company I started up. I was just looking at my first files were back in like 2008. With the idea of after years and kind of the policy advocacy, both ecological and social advocacy space. And I was actually working at Sonos at the time. I wanted to create a company that was designed to kind of come at social and ecological change from more of like how do we outcompete folks like at the market level through art, through music, through great well-designed products versus the kind of space I was in for quite some time, which was policy based, a lot of confrontation based things like that, which it just wasn't resonating all that much for me at that point after close to since the early 90s kind of being in that other footing. So LoAtree came to be as an eco lifestyle company. And I quickly learned that I wasn't cut out for managing artists, and the music and art business was tough, and product business was tough. B2C was tough. And I still had a number of skills related to kind of general marketing and comms after years in politics and nonprofits that were brought to bear through an early invitation to support the move of Santa Barbara Earth Day from the Sunken Garden over to Alameda Park, and doubling from 1 day to 2 days, and also doubled the number of humans from about 12 to 15,000 to 25 to 30,000. And so LoA was brought on early on, one of our first contracts, to help the Community Environmental Council, who's the host of that event, make that transition. So lots of love and props to the CEC crew for giving us our start. And it was, frankly, it was just me at the time. I had some friends who were kind of supportive in different ways, but I just decided I was going to make a go of it. I left Sonos to kind of go at it full time and try to make a business. Shortly thereafter, convinced Eric Cardenas, my best friend and business partner, join me and leave his nice, safe position at a very at a well-known foundation, and he came over to join me as well for the ride. And together in 2012, we incorporated as LoAcom, with the idea of doing more of a B2B business around marketing, communications, and strategy. And at the heart of it being a movement building business, where, for both of us, having spent most of our young careers in trying to make ecological and social change, we're always kind of looking for the next greatest thing to give us more tools in the toolbox to be able to enact social change. And so we started right after that, working with a variety of nonprofits and mission-driven businesses on marketing communications, so like socials, web, email, public awareness campaigns, and things like that. And that was really the genesis of LoAcom, that kind of is still going strong. But I was heading that up as CEO, Eric as COO, and that actually ran us right into connecting with the Regen Network people. So even before I move on, did you have any thoughts or any more background on LoAcom? And otherwise, I can jump into kind of the next phase, which brought us into the intersection of crypto and climate.
Really, just to validate that, as a local in Santa Barbara, I did notice that when LoAcom came into the space, you really brought sexy to sustainability. Bringing it to the forefront of people's minds in a way that wasn't just, what's this crunchy granola thing? But you're like, no, this is something that we should all be interested in, and yeah, really valued that. So yeah, you mentioned now work with the Regen Network, and I think that's where LoA Labs comes in a little bit more, right? So what is your position within Regen Network actually, and take it from here?
The quick history there is LoAcom. At the time, I was out in Gaviota on a chunk of land where we were doing regenerative agriculture, and I got to connect with even before the Regen Network, the Terra Genesis International crew, which was run at the time by Christian Shearer and Gregory Landaway, who are also the co-founders of Regen Network. And they basically said, "Hey, Dave, we've got this idea. We know you've been in the regen ag space a while, and you're in the marketing comm space, and we're thinking about utilizing blockchain technology to help essentially align ecological health with economics at the core of it." And frankly, I didn't know anything about blockchain at that point. Of course, I'd heard about Bitcoin, and I'd kind of watched it, just over news stories, just kind of being into a technology generally. But I had not really participated. And I'd say even for the first 2 years of our engagement, and we started with them at 2017, that, we were doing some core marketing communications. They went through some thin times. There's kind of the, some of the heavy bear markets in crypto in 2017, 2018, and the ICO boom and bust during that time. And all of us at Regen, and we're a pretty small crew at that time, just kept building, and our team started to get more attuned to the potential opportunities to utilize distributed ledger technology, Web3 and blockchain tools to give us a new tool really in the ecological and social change space that we hadn't had before, which was, how do you tokenize impact, and how do you align economic incentives, to support behavioral changes and have those changes be rewarded. Where as often, for so long, to this day, those of us who've been in philanthropy or nonprofits or even mission-driven business, there's actually not been great in financial incentives to actually do right. In fact, it's rarely rewarded. It's all of the costs of our degenerative ways for so long in society have actually been externalized and put on the backs of the environment or future generations. We don't value clean air and clean water. We leave it as something to clean up to the nonprofit sector or to governments or otherwise, and it's not embedded actually into the cost of producing a product. So we're starting to get a little more excited about that, as we're moving closer to the mainnet launch for Regen Network, I just couldn't resist kind of the urge anymore to really dive as deep as possible into the Web3 space. Fast forward from mainnet launch, which was April of last year, all the way to this year. We as of I think it was like October, November of last year, we spun up a new company called LoA Labs, and it's a laboratory for better world blockchain. It has a relationship to LoAcom. Clearly, our staffing is actually through LoAcom. But I stepped back as the CEO of LoAcom and stepped forward into the CEO role of LoA Labs, and EC stepped forward into the CEO role of LoAcom. And but same like root focus on movement. As if you will, more for LoA Labs, definitely a specialty in that marketing, comms, strategy, and community space. But really now looking across the Web3 horizon. And trying to engage early on with many of these mission-driven protocols who are doing anything from tokenizing carbon or even tokenizing social impact and creating all of these new or organizing DAOs to buy land for conservation purposes. We're working really at a really vibrant intersection of change makers, all rooting in these new tools to give us a better ability to engage some of these really pernicious issues around just degenerative systems that are leaving us with a pretty pessimistic viewpoint on how to reverse climate change. And to me, like as somebody who's like eternal optimist, couldn't be more bullish and excited about that intersection of crypto and climate right now, and moving full steam ahead into that space.
That's awesome. You mentioned tokenizing carbon. There's a connection between the Regen Network and Kalima DAO. Can you explain what that connection is and what they do?
Sure. Yeah. We caught wind of the Kalima folks a couple months before they launched. For those of you not familiar, the Kalima DAO concept is basically an effort to purchase and sink into their what they call their carbon black hole as much carbon as possible, with the using a kind of in some ways game theory of where the thought process is, if you purchase and bring a bunch of the kind of a lot of times kind of bottom of the barrel token or carbon off and sink it, it ends up making carbon more expensive. So they're in some ways, I mean, artificial is not the right word, but their goal is literally to buy up carbon units and lock them away so that carbon becomes more expensive. Companies have less of an incentive to essentially buy cheap carbon to offset their carbon footprint, and more of an incentive to behaviorally reduce their emissions, which means making investments into the technologies to reduce emissions, or choosing better supply chains or different materials and other things that right now you kind of it's not a get out of jail free card, but carbon's been relatively inexpensive for quite some time. And, Kalima has already, I think to date, utilizing the ability to own a Kalima token by matching a ton of BCT, which is the base carbon ton, along with equivalent amount of USDC essentially, or USDC pair, and essentially creates a Kalima token. And it's had frankly a pretty wild ride. I'd say it's not only, it's sunk 17 million tons of carbon. It's gotten the notice of a lot of the traditional carbon markets who are like, whoa, who's this big crypto player in the space now? And kind of brought crypto, in a lot of ways out from the kind of, frankly, pretty, it's not the right narrative, right? With this narrative that crypto and climate are juxtaposed to each other is something that is a legacy of kind of, proof of work and Bitcoin mining, right. Which I get, and it's got there's a big footprint there. But in a lot of ways, it's really missing the mark of actually utilizing Web3 tools and blockchain specifically for sequestering carbon or creating new markets for ecological assets that hasn't existed before. And Kalima's brought that sensibility to really an entire industry within 4 months. It's been really incredible, and kudos to the Kalima team for having the vision and foresight just to put their, kind of insert the crypto community into the climate fight. And again, I think there's upgrades opportunities and all of that. Nothing was done perfect, but the fact that we are now tokenizing traditional carbon credits and bringing them on chain and allowing the crypto, and its immense capital to actually participate in those markets is a real victory for the entire climate space, whether people actually fully understand that or not. Yeah, and actually one thing, so what the Regen relationship, to get back to your point or your question, was we actually furnished them with a number of the carbon credits that end up being purchased. And that's one of Regen's, continuing product developments is to originate and furnish to the carbon markets some of the highest quality nature-based carbon credits available. Carbon credits that aren't scraping, smokestacks or something and being able to call that a sequestered carbon ton, but actually being able to underwrite the stewardship of lands and support the natural ecosystem ability to sequester carbon, and that ultimately, in a decentralized fashion, in a market-based fashion, if you could do that around the world, that is the type of carbon and the type of natural assets that Regen Network is looking to tokenize and create a market platform for, to be able to sell to Microsoft, which we had sold over $1 million worth of carbon credits to, all the way to other companies that are quickly moving to the space, saying we've got to get carbon on our balance sheets. We've got to, for our consumers' sake, and also it's just the right thing to do. Everybody's got to be at the table on the climate fight. And one of the cleanest ways is to purchase carbon to offset your own carbon footprint as a company. And I think, as we'll see, just like with anything, I think carbon negative will be the standard at some point. And ultimately, I think the financial instruments that will be available for it will create all kinds of neat opportunities for a whole new industry of farming carbon and restoring ecologies, specifically with the goal of sinking that carbon and that carbon being monetized and the future backing of currencies around the world.
Yeah, I love that. The thought of the carbon farming, a carbon farmer, you're actively sequestering, and Regen had some really cool projects. A lot of them were grassland related, right? Big grassland projects that were sequestering carbon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we worked with a group out of Australia for this first chunk that we sold to Microsoft. And Microsoft basically came to a number of folks and said, hey, we're trying to sequester, offset our carbon footprint since our inception in the 70s. So we were one of their, of a couple dozen vendors, I believe, or maybe it's shy of just over a dozen vendors. But we had a focus on soil carbon and in grasslands in particular. And we recreated the whole carbon credit class around this, called the Carbon Plus Grasslands Credit. And we worked with a project developer who was managing a number of different farms in the Australia region, where they had been tracking their ecological data around how much carbon, kind of the baseline, what they started with and how much they were sequestering, and created the methodology and the monitoring system, and then essentially gave created enough of a framework to convince Microsoft that the rigor and the science backing and frankly the verifiable ecological data, being able to bring that on chain and make it transparent and auditable without double counting, was enough to convince them to come in at a pretty significant way and purchase these carbon credits through Regen Network, and really was our first major sale. And that was back in January. It was quite an exciting time. And now we're lining up a whole new, we've got a lot of carbon credits that we're about to bring to market, which is going to be really exciting. And, so it's kind of more sophisticated development of that marketplace, bringing them on chain, and then having a lot of the front and back end interfaces required to be able to do that without any hand holding. Because a lot of that stuff initially, we actually, just had to do in more of a manual way, just because that's where we're in our product development cycle. But now, I think by the end of Q1, we're going to have some pretty exciting product opportunities, that will allow companies to come in and make these purchases and have this all be locked in permanently into the blockchain, so that everyone can see and trust that these companies are meeting their obligations.
Fantastic. Kalima DAO recently posted on their blog, Web3 will be a key catalyst for change by enabling regenerative finance, or ReFi, to rapidly scale and align incentives between those who want to have a positive impact. What does that mean to you? And what is ReFi?
Yeah, so ReFi, it's starting to become a buzzy term, and it's great, frankly. I think it's going to mean different things to different people, but at the heart of it, it's regenerative finance, right? So it's the concept that where capitalism for years, right? And it's not because capitalism is bad per se, but the way that we have manipulated capitalism, we have again left Earth out of the equation, which has been frankly disastrous. To have Earth at the negotiating table of every business deal is really been a terrible, terrible choice, and one that we can do better on, right? So, but you've got to create the financial tools and mechanisms in order to bring Earth assets into the economic equation. And at the heart of it, regenerative finance seeks to do that. It basically is saying everything that business builds on, that our civilization rests on, that our personal health depends on, is ecological in nature. And we need to be able to value that and create the tooling to integrate that at the transaction level in almost any part of our economic model in any country. The way that we consider development of products, the way that we consider our balance sheets, both personally and professionally. That this decentralized finance movement is seeking to help organize and bring to market, the most important aspect of what really wealth will be in the future, right? I think there's a movement with Regen and Kalima and a whole crew of us that are, is philosophically thinks that, true wealth is ecological wealth. That the future, the generational wealth that we think about building for our kids and their kids isn't just going to be fiat currencies that are, frankly, backed by very little, right? Maybe that's military might or petrol dollars or other things, that they're going to be really backed by, things that are like carbon or other natural assets, where these things serve as proxies for having a place that our kids can grow and thrive and build businesses on in the future, that if left unchecked, climate change is going to fundamentally disrupt every aspect of our lives, right? It's already, whether we know it or not, it's touching all parts from any business. It really doesn't matter what your business is. You can't escape climate change and its impact. And I think decentralized finance, and maybe, of course, there's a utopian view of what we can do in decentralized finance, but at worst, it's another, I think, probably powerful tool to have at our abilities to really shift how capital moves through an economy, to integrate earth and ecosystem health. And to me, like I said, from being in the policy business and the activism business for years, I just could not be more excited that this is like been a huge missing piece of our for those of us in that business to really be able to, like, frankly, compete at all. Like, just compete in the marketplace of ideals, and compete of a vision of how we protect the planet without it costing a business, through taxes, or without it, crimping our lifestyle or something along those lines. Where if it becomes ubiquitous that that clean air and clean water and endangered species and and healthy soils are endemic to our relationship to each other through finances and economic transactions, then it becomes less of a policy fight or a political fight, and it just becomes a deep, like, responsibility and both short, mid, and long term. It makes sense at every phase of our relationship to money and to each other, to really incorporate ecological health into our interactions with each other. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. So I'm hoping that's what DeFi aims to do, and it's going to look different and to a lot of different people. But I'm excited to see it get so much buzz of late.
Yeah, and even just like you said, once you're locking up more and more base tons of carbon, then the price is going to go up. And if you're holding the Kalima token, then you're going to be increasing that value that you hold. So yep. It's going to have really cool financial implications. We were doing a little research before, and we saw one of the newest projects by Kalima DAO called Ocean Drop. It's a collaboration NFT project where they are actively locking up tons of carbon. Colin, you did a deep dive on this.
So there was a series of artists that did ocean-themed NFTs, and then those NFTs were sold to fund the start of an ocean foundation that does research and climate change initiatives for the ocean. So it was really cool that they also did some carbon offsets for those NFTs through Offsetstra and another company called Creole.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm not super familiar with that particular project, but I'm, both with Offsetstra and Creole, they're part of the blockchain infrastructure carbon offsetting working group, BecoWG, who we're shepherding, kind of serving as their marketing comm strategy team. So really a great cruise. And I think, cutting to it, like, the blue carbon space is going to be massive, right? I mean, it's, the ability for oceans to sink carbon and, and frankly, just bellwethers of ecological health is so significant that, it's going to be multiple trillions of dollars of businesses built around repairing our oceans and creating, and all the way from Diatom, which I think is actually trying to lock up ocean plastic and issue tokens based on kind of verified, I don't know if it's tons of plastic or what their exact metric is, all the way to a project we're working on, for example, with a group, Chainlink and Regenerative, I can't remember their last name, another regenerative company run by Neil Spackman, of essentially planting 100 million mangroves and mangrove trees, which, again, sit at that really special interface of fresh and salt water and are massive carbon sinks. And so there's a mix of NFTs and carbon credits and all kinds of, again, these Web3 tools that are creating really exciting ways of rewarding ecological impact and proof of ecological regeneration, right? Essentially, creating bonding mechanisms and all these other really neat opportunities that distributed ledger technologies allow, and the ability to tokenize change and create financial markets around us. I feel like we're so early, frankly, to the space that we really haven't seen anything yet.
Well said. Yeah, the piece Ocean Drop, since its inception in October, has internalized over 21 tons of carbon and will do so ad infinitum, according to their website. So I love that they put that just as a reminder forever. It ain't going nowhere.
That's fantastic. It's amazing what you've been able to accomplish in seems like a short time, and I guess, maybe even Regen's 1 year old, a little bit more than that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, well, Regen itself, technically the mainnet spun up last year. So in blockchain times, it's about just shy of a year old, but they've been hustling for quite some time, to their credit. And a lot of the building has gone on in quiet for a lot of these folks for a bit of time, but definitely a lot moving in space. And, even for LoA Labs, it's been a product of a long time, a lot of work, and kind of observing how, what's moving in the space and being able to be agile and react to it, which I think to Eric and I's, plan is, don't get locked in too hard on anything, because the needs change and so do the opportunities.
Yeah. What would you say would be some of the biggest challenges that you had to face setting up LoA Labs, and then how did you overcome them?
It's a good question. Well, we're working in the Web3 space, which is interesting. And, even legally, we've set up our corporation in Wyoming, which, deep red state that probably isn't known for its ecological chops necessarily, but their approach to Web3 and crypto and DAOs is pretty progressive. So that was interesting, just to go spin up in another state versus in cozy Santa Barbara or California, where we're based on the day-to-day. We've had to hire a new team, which hiring in period it's just challenging, and Web3 space is even more challenging, just to understand the culture, the language, the tech stack, all of these things. Even just to do marketing is important, and to find people who kind of can straddle that space is not that easy. And thankfully, we've brought on some really neat folks, talented individuals to start populating the LoA Labs team. And I'd say, there's some bittersweetness of, Eric and I have been working together really closely on developing LoAcom for, over a decade now. And kind of we're splitting up in on the day-to-day running of two different companies. So, I miss him. He's a great guy to work with on the day-to-day. So, we're building up kind of teams around our own companies, and but are still business partners in both businesses. But we have decided it's just that time where he's ready to take the helm of LoAcom and create some new opportunities and different style of running that business, with the same root business. And I see an opportunity in LoA Labs to bring the ethos of LoAcom and the but also for me, that just the understanding that it feels like it's been difficult for better world businesses to really build successful businesses without falling into degenerative systems, right? So we're at the mercy of the dollar. We're at the mercy of corporate structures that reward bottom lines at the cost of really anything. And in Web3, and the way that, and I would encourage, most, any entrepreneur to look, is that the whole concept is to align values and mission and community together, and to develop economies around that. And for me, it frankly took a bit to just wrap my head around that concept. I'm like, how do you do this? But now that I get it, and we're attracting and even being paid in currencies that are fundamentally backed by human or ecological health, is like one of the most rewarding things that I've ever been experienced on a professional level. Knowing that there still needs to be on ramps and off ramps for fiat and kind of pay day-to-day OpEx, but that the core value proposition and how we exchange value with each other as partners and as colleagues in the movement business and Web3 is through values aligned tokens and other currencies and compensation. That is just, it's just so new, right? To think that we can do that and that the dollar is still, the 900-pound gorilla in the room, but we can do a lot of transactions, and before we actually have to off ramp into fiat, and that we can create a more creative and regenerative relationships with each other that that have really high integrity. And I'm just like enamored with all of that. So the amount of time I spend on crypto Twitter and reading blogs, it just hurts my head, honestly. That's been difficult. But at the same time, the amount of sleep I've lost just spinning around the latest idea and the new concepts that are coming at me has caused me some disrupted sleep patterns, but it's all worth the cost right now.
Yeah, I think many of our listeners in crypto will be able to relate to that. Is that we call it crypto brain. When you
never look at the world the same, right?
You mentioned it real quick when you're talking about Wyoming DAOs. Is there any LoA DAO on the future plan or anything?
I think there is. We've been talking about it. We're actually we're entering into an exploration phase as a company around it already. Meeting with colleagues in the space and figuring out what it's going to look like. Our goal is essentially, our root skill set is around community, and comms. We also run a validator, a LoA Labs validator on a handful of protocols. But we have, at the end of the day, are in the better world blockchain movement building business, right? We want to essentially be of service to all of these passionate entrepreneurs in the Web3 space, all of these mission-driven companies that are trying to spin up into this new, totally unpredictable, volatile, early phase economy and market, and provide them some guardrails and provide them some deep talent to help bring up their protocols and do their jobs well. And Web3 really offers special ways of building relationships together. That's not just generic, sign a contract here. These fees and these services, kind of boring scopes and things like that. That even with DAOs and token interactions and essentially swapping value with each other, that I think having a LoA Labs DAO that brought together talent in the marketing comms community, and even I'd say even the code space, all to be there and be of service to these new protocols is something that we're going to explore, just to be able to be as agile as possible without needing to kind of scale under the kind of restrictive technical W-2 style engagements of work. Right? What is work? We want people to be inspired and fired up, and have their own independence and agency. And we want them, to find a home in LoA Labs in the future that gives them the ability to interact with the most promising blockchain projects in the world that are all, laser focused on repairing humans' relationship to each other and to the planet. So everything's on the table, frankly, with us at LoA Labs as far as what we're going to evolve to. We're reading daily and exploring with thought leaders on what that might look like. And hopefully we'll see some interesting stuff in the next 12 to 18 months.
You mentioned earlier in the episode some stuff coming in Q1. Anything that you can share with our listeners of what to look out for on the horizon that you guys are working on? Yeah,
I mean, there's a couple different ways to take this. So, LoA Labs is working with Regen Network and Regen Foundation. They're part of the same ecosystem, but independent entities. And they're both have some neat work coming here shortly. We're working with IXO, which is also in the kind of tokenizing impact space, but oftentimes through the social lens. And the BICO WG crew, which is a consortium of a lot of the kind of leading thinkers in the kind of ReFi space that are, like Kalima and Toucan and Regen Network, Blockchain for Climate, et cetera. Those are all folks in the BICO space that we're kind of organizing that entity and providing it some foundational marketing comms work. More broadly, you'll see a proliferation of DAOs in 2022. We're seeing them spin up almost as quickly as you can imagine, like literally on the daily. If you follow crypto Twitter, I think there'll be a rush toward that, which is going to be exciting to spinning up DAOs and capturing some market share. And I think it's going to be messy and chaotic as Web3 is, but it'll be exciting. I think the regenerative finance space is going to come in really hot with new tooling and opportunities. I think everyone's still finding like where they fit in all of this. And there's going to be some overlap. And again, I think some messiness, but I think it's going to be a beautiful chaos. And I think with as my friend and colleague, Gregory Landaway says, of Regen Network, of like a posture about collaborating, the competition is like a core like ethos for a lot of us, that, you can have your competitive friendly relationships. And at the end of the day, we're open source and we're trying like literally moving in the same direction. So everyone's kind of giving and taking a little bit and figuring out how best to like support each other in a movement framework versus like trying to just grab market share and make the most money. At least I think that's a quality right now that's really deeply embedded in a lot of the projects we're working on, even where, people literally collaborating that might be, competitive in a lot of other spaces. That's exciting. I think we're even in the Kalima space, we're going to see some more Kalima, and this is Kalima like a regen toucan space of a broader variety of options beyond the BCT, the base carbon ton. So similar to like, imagine it's like, you wanted to go to the store and you have conventional tomato and organic tomato, and then there's a regenerative tomato, and people will have choices in which carbon tons they're able to choose and start to create some differentiation in the market on that front, which I think is going to be a really exciting thing. And I also think you'll see carbon assets entering the Cosmos ecosystem, which we're pretty heavy in for those interested in seeing like in osmosis and other areas where there's decentralized exchanges actually seeing ecological assets start to show up as opportunities for liquidity pooling or other kind of some of the DeFi decentralized exchange mechanisms that you'll see that often are just full of tokens, which are amazing projects that don't have a relationship to ecological health. That'll start to be a new set of assets that to start to filter in. And Regen Network is working on that front, which is going to be, I think you'll see some stuff by the end of Q1. And I think that, one of the bigger things is, I think probably you'll start to see some really interesting new relationships being built from kind of the traditional ecological movement groups and the crypto ecological movement groups. There's a pretty big distance between the two. And I don't think that serves either camp, if you will. It's still for better or for worse, Web3 is still a pretty clubby, siloed space. If you're in it and you're like, wow, this is like the most amazing thing ever. But if you're not, you think, it's all, Bitcoin miners doing bad things and sucking as much energy as possible. So I think breaking down that narrative of crypto as a partner in reversing climate change and creating more connective tissue between traditional ecological movement groups and even policymakers and this burgeoning and movement of crypto and climate and crypto and social impact, I think it's just going to be super exciting, rich area. And slowly, I think we'll see the beginnings of starting to blur some lines between those as, the traditional kind of social ecological movements just understand that Web3 is, if you're not utilizing that tool, you're going to fall behind. You don't have to be all in necessarily. But yeah, I think you'll, again, in this calendar year, I'm guessing you'll start to see some interesting partnerships start to build up around that between institutions and crypto. And I don't think we'll see a normalization by any means. And frankly, I think it'll take years to be fully immersed. But there's already interesting discussions happening on that front.
Excellent. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation so far. I want to zoom out just a little bit now.
Yeah.
And what kind of trends do you see in the broader picture of crypto and blockchain coming up for the next couple of years?
The broader trends, there's a big buzz. I mean, last year's NFT, the year of NFTs. This next year will be the year of DAOs. I think even beyond people just forming DAOs, like there's a whole range of like opportunities around tooling and communication platforms and governance of DAOs. It's going to be just an interesting area because I think, frankly, it's going to upend DAOs. I think will upend traditional business models as well as philanthropy. So I think keep a real close eye out. I think those who are like go out and understand how to form, operate, and participate in DAOs are going to have a lot of work for the next couple of years. I think we saw some of this in 2021. I think it's probably going to be a bumpy year again for policy in crypto. Frankly, as a pretty progressive guy, some of the least engaged and understanding folks in the kind of policy space are a lot of the liberal groups and liberal politicians. And I think, there's going to be probably more of a concerted effort on the crypto side of engaging policymakers and probably more nuanced takes from policymakers around crypto. Versus right now, it's been pretty stark, relatively anti crypto on a policy level, as securities regulators and are taking have a side eye view of crypto for a lot of well-founded reasons. But it's one of those areas that I think those of us who have straddled policy for a number of years and who are in the crypto space realize that it would be a tremendous disservice to throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to regulating crypto and blockchain Web3 tools, over regulating to the point of stifling innovation. And there are going to need to be some guardrails. So navigating that kind of ground is going to be, I think, treacherous, uneven, also very exciting to see. And then, more broadly, I just think crypto is going to going to enter into consumer and business balance sheets, right? To hedge against inflation, to have diversified portfolios, to participate in this kind of growing area where, if you can go out to an ATM and withdraw, utilize your BTC account or to, engage in transactions, I think we're going to see a lot more opportunities for economic transactions that feature cryptocurrencies. Coinbase in a lot of ways is leading this of just like onboarding a whole new wave of people who don't know really much about crypto at all, but they've heard enough about Ethereum or Dogecoin or Bitcoin or otherwise that they like want to participate. So, kind of creating this whole new set of tooling and user experience, user interface to engage the masses is, I think, going to accelerate pretty quickly over the next 24 months, and really just create innumerable amounts of opportunities for new businesses and really, I think, pipeline billions and billions of dollars into the Web3 space, as just consumers, regular consumers, become more familiar and feel more familiar and more excited about engaging in these blockchain projects. I think is a trend that is inevitable, and my expectation is, even with some of the regulators around the world, flashing yellow lights or red lights for that matter on these emerging technologies, that the cat is already out of the bag, and now it's a matter of if you can't beat them, join them. And I think that's going to be the position of a lot of regulators and, frankly, a lot of businesses who are just like, even like Stripe, for example. We followed along. I mean, when companies like Stripe decide that they're getting into crypto, and they're like on the sitting in the middle of I don't know how many billions or trillions of dollars of transactions, then there's no going back, right? It's just, that's the heart of the economy, economic transactions. So look forward to that too.
Yeah, and what you said about the more nuanced take from legislators regarding crypto is really important. That's why we're really excited to have you on today to educate our listeners and to really bring more information to the lawmakers. So we definitely encourage people to share what you're doing and share this information with our legislators and help them get more educated.
Yeah.
How can our listeners support the work that LoA Labs or Regen Network's doing?
Thank you for asking. Definitely you can track us down on Twitter. LoA Labs, a great way to just kind of, we try to, we're still crypto Twitter centric, in our com style at LoA Labs. That's our audience, but it is a good way to kind of have a meeting place at the intersection of crypto and climate, and just crypto and social impact. That's, what we work on. So that's probably the best place. We'll be actually spinning up a Discord. For those people who don't know, Discord's like the Web3's version of Slack in some ways, but for communities to interact with each other. So look out for that. We actually have a Discord already up, but it's still under development, so it's not worth sharing at the moment. But yeah, we'd love to connect in. And what we're looking for is, for those companies looking to engage crypto from the mission-driven space, we want to talk to you. If you're in crypto and you're spinning up a new mission-driven project, we want to talk to you. We want to be part of it. And again, we posted this week, at some points, I think, in the crypto climate, and just like our vibe check is, sometimes we'll be the coach, sometimes we'll be a player on the field, sometimes we'll be cheering from the stands. And sometimes we'll be an investor. We just want to be of service to the space, and we're not, frankly, overly concerned about, striking business deals with people to advance our own interests. It's really, the opportunities are far, far greater than anyone could possibly imagine, and we're not worried about figuring out how to build a business here. Where it's more of like, how do we grow our impact collectively as fast as possible is our only goal. Like, what does that look like? Connect people as quickly as possible who are doing similar things, work in public, build in public, and, create, this market and this technology for public goods that, again, haven't been valued forever. Like, that's where, if you're of that mindset and you're talented, or you're in marketing, you're in comms, you're in technology, you want to figure out how to plug in, just give us a call. Find us. I'm at david@loalabs.io. Is an easy way to get a hold of me, or you can DM me on Twitter. And then, Regen Network. Just go to regen.network, get on our newsletter. It comes out, once a month. Follow our Twitter, which is pretty active on the daily. And similarly, we're, with all of these projects, everyone's looking for builders. Everyone's looking for community members that are actively engaged. And it's one of these spaces that is so rare that by simple participation and engagement, and you can you can create your own value, and that value will be, somebody will figure out a way to reward that value. And it's just one of these unique things where, if like you're a super fan for a company, maybe they'll send you a 6-pack of something, but if you're a super fan and you're engaged in Web3, then you should apply for a grant to get your work funded, or or somebody's going to send you some tokens as a thank you, or somebody is going to create, a grants program to make sure that you and your other super fan colleagues are rewarded, with the ability to put on an event to bring other super fans together. It's just one of these places where people dedicated to building and committed to a project, they're just rewarded in one way or the other. And I just love that about Web3, where it really is about community. And if you're community oriented and you want to engage the climate issue, let me know, and I'll point you in any direction I can.
Wow, he said it better than we could ever have said it. That's right. You have to get involved in Web3. It's a lot of fun. It's really rewarding. It's the best place to be. So just get involved.
Yeah, thanks so much for being on the episode with us today. We'll definitely keep our listeners informed over the next few months when you got some rollouts, and hopefully get you back on the podcast in 2022 again, and see how things are progressing.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you guys giving me a platform to spread the good word. And thank you all to your listeners who are tuned in, and get out there and build a better world. That's all. That's everyone's business now.
We're going to wrap it up here for today. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave us a review.
We'd like to give a big shout out and thank you to our friend Matthew Patrick Donner, who's responsible for the Block Explorer production, including our music, mixing, and editing.
Thank you for exploring the world of blockchain with us. Crypto is changing the world, and we're here to ensure that you're ready.
Please subscribe to our podcast. And as Dave mentioned, we need your help to inspire regulators to explore a more nuanced and educated view of crypto. So please share this episode with your legislators and, of course, with your family, friends, and coworkers.
We look forward to sharing our next episode with you.
Cheers.
Cheers.